the nutrition curriculum, and as I said earlier, what I'm calling nutrition policy, is created by, pushed by, funded by big food and big pharma. Hello and welcome to the Carnivore Diet episode of Move the Chains podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Munsey, and as I record this, I'm about little over 30 days into my second venture into the carnivore diet. I say second. I did this way back in 2017. I did a 6-week experiment where I really tested carnivore diet. I did blood work before and immediately after. I shared all that on a blog on my website. I wish I could link to that for you, but as we recently updated my site and did a migration, I lost that blog post. So I'll get into the details of that one later on in this episode. But in this episode, I'm going to share with you why I'm back on the carnivore diet. I'll explain how I'm setting this up so that I can be successful. I'll talk to you about some of the myths of plants and fiber, some of the common objections that we would hear to why someone would go on the carnivore diet. We'll talk about the benefits of maybe the top 8 reasons to go carnivore, as well as maybe some common Q&A, question and answer. But before we get into that, I want to start with how we got here in terms of what we all think we know about nutrition, how the recommendations for healthy eating are what they are, and just give you a little bit of background on nutrition sciences, and a key distinction between nutrition science and nutrition policy. So with that being said, before we go any further, the disclaimer, I got to do this. This is not financial advice. This is not health advice. Always consult your financial or health advisor before doing anything. So with that said, I do have a degree a dietetics degree in food science and human nutrition. So I am a food scientist. I am a nutritionist. And that is a dietetics degree. So had I done the internship after school, I would be a registered dietitian, an RD. I am not, because I chose not to pursue that route. I did not want to join the orthodoxy, as I call it, the system, because in school, our curriculum was broken into 2 sections. Just like most college majors, you have your prerequisites, and then you have your core major requirements, right? And so the prerequisites were all the science classes. So I took more science classes than you probably know existed. Not just microbiology, but food and dairy microbiology. Took biochem, chemistry, organic chemistry, anatomy and physiology, biochemistry. Did I say that one already? I don't even remember them all. Took regular biology. Anyway, all the sciences. And so I'm learning how the body works and how metabolism works and how we get cellular energy and all of these things. And then I go to the nutrition classes, and what we were taught in the nutrition classes simply didn't jive with what we were taught in metabolism and, biochemistry. So, here I am, I'm the kid in the back of the class raising his hand, who's most of the time sleeping. I was a terrible student. I'm the first to admit it. Doesn't mean I'm not smart, but I'm raising my hand and, hey, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't add up. This doesn't match with what we were taught here. And so the teachers hated me. And I did not want to be a part. I didn't want to pay to be an intern, to do an internship and then pay to work in a clinical setting. That's another reason I didn't pursue becoming a dietitian. I don't want to work in a clinical setting. I wanted to work with people who were coming to me on their own volition, people who wanted to change to be an optimizer. That's you. That's why you're here. That's why you listen to the podcasts like this one. I did not want to be a registered dietitian rounding in a hospital, going to see, so-and-so's uncle or grandfather after they had a heart attack and tell them that they can't eat McDonald's anymore. That's just not how I wanted to spend my professional career. Not to say that there's anything wrong with that. There are great people who, try to make a positive difference doing that. But I run from people who are dietitians. And my advice to you would be to do the same thing. Because in order to call yourself a dietitian, you have to go through the program, you have to be certified, and you have to speak the party line in order to keep your certification, to keep the ordainment as a dietitian. So again, if I see somebody with the letters RD and they're promoting or marketing themselves as a dietitian, they're saying they're a dietitian, they have been given permission by a board, a body somewhere, that it is okay for them to use that certification, that language, that terminology to call themselves that thing. And in order to get that ordainment, they have to kiss the ring. They have to toe the party line. And that party line is, as you're probably aware by now, horse shit. The standard American diet, the food recommendations that we're taught are completely backwards. And what I realized when I was in school is that the nutrition agenda doesn't match the science. And when you start asking questions, why, it's just like anything else, follow the money. And, I quickly learned that the nutrition curriculum, and as I said earlier, what I'm calling nutrition policy, is created by, pushed by, funded by big food and big pharma, specifically big food. I don't want to turn this into, conspiracy theory stuff, but it really isn't. When you're told all foods fit, you have to be an idiot to believe that. You can't tell me that, a Coca-Cola or a Pepsi is just as healthy as, something that we know is healthy. And I was going to say banana, but we're on the Carnivore Diet podcast, and I'm going to tell you in a few minutes a banana isn't as healthy as you think either. So anyway, again, like all foods fit. I mean, don't tell me that, French fries from McDonald's are healthy. Don't tell me that, potato chips or sodas or, cereals are healthy. They're not. As a matter of fact, cornflakes was the original cereal that was invented. And it was invented by a doctor. Guy's last name was Kellogg. Go Google this. I'll put a link to the article in the show notes here so you can find it easily. But long story short, cornflakes were invented by a psych doctor who wanted to reduce the incidence of masturbation and sexual encounters. He was a prude who thought that sexual thoughts came from the devil and wanted to eradicate them. And he actually ran a sanitarium in Battle Creek, Michigan, which is where Kellogg's is still to this day headquartered. And he created cornflakes as a breakfast to reduce testosterone, which would then in turn reduce incidence of masturbation and sexual encounters. I couldn't make this stuff up. Like, that's too crazy for me to make up. And so just think about this then. If prior to that, there was no cereal, what did people eat for breakfast, right? It sure as shit wasn't a bowl of Life or Chex or cornflakes and those are on the spectrum of cereals regarded as healthy, right? I'm not talking about Cookie Crunch or Lucky Charms or whatever else bullshit is in that aisle. But if cornflakes was invented to reduce testosterone, just think about how breakfast foods have devolved even from that as I don't even want to say standard, but as a starting point, right? So like Pop-Tarts, come on. That's not part of a healthy or complete breakfast. I don't care how many commercials you saw in the 80s or 90s that told you that. Okay, so how did we get here, and how did we get to this point where we think that fat is the enemy, that the food pyramid is what it is? We've got some dude named Ansel Keys to thank for that. This guy really set the nutrition world back, I'll say 100 years, because we haven't recovered from it. And he did what he did in the 1950s. President Eisenhower had some heart attacks, and then that got blamed on the fatty foods that he was eating. And that's when the healthy breakfast idea of cereal and orange juice and skim milk really got pushed on the American public. And if you look at what that breakfast is, it's nothing but carbs. It's devoid of very, very low protein, very, very low fat. And all that's going to do is spike your insulin and leave you hungry again in a couple hours. And anyway, that was sort of the foundation of what at that point was, there was a food pyramid, and then it became a my plate, and then I think it went back to a pyramid, and who knows what it is anymore. I don't pay attention to it because I don't listen to that. We also know from back then, as fat was being demonized by Ansel Keys, who had how he got into the position of policy making that he did. I don't understand, but he did, and he was able to. He was involved in some studies where he cherry picked data to support his bias. And then that set in motion this whole, policy, delivery and creation. Fat was demonized, and sugar and carbs were not. They were promoted. And, there's been proof now that back then there were researchers at some of the highest, most esteemed research institutions, Harvard, for one, that I know of. I won't say any of the others and get it wrong. But researchers were paid off by the sugar industry to falsify the research and make fat out to be the evil and to say that sugar wasn't. And so all of this, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and, through the 80s and 90s, all we heard was, fat was bad. Avoid saturated fat. Don't eat any fat and eat, low carb. And if you look at how human health has changed through history, I forget the exact statistics, but I want to say at the end of World War II, the percentage of obese people in the US and in the UK was somewhere around 6 to 8%. And that number remained relatively flat until we went through this transition in nutrition policy and what was supposed to be eaten. And if you look those numbers up now, globally, we see obesity in the 20 to 30% range. I think something like 60%, 66%, almost 2/3 of people are overweight or obese. So, incidence of being overweight, being obese has skyrocketed. And so whether you want to go carnivore or not, I'm painting the picture, hopefully, that what you've been told is healthy is ass backwards. It's wrong. So at the very least, please walk away from this with a knowledge that you need to be your own scientist. Don't fall for the ideology. Don't fall for the politics, and ask questions, challenge things. Hell, challenge me as I go through the rest of this. If you can poke holes in what I'm saying, please attempt to and send me messages. Don't be a keyboard warrior on the internet and be an asshole. Send it to me. We'll have a conversation. I am open to challenging my belief systems, and as a matter of fact, that's how I got started on carnivore in 2017. I heard people talking about it, and I said, "This is crazy. What the hell are people thinking?" And so I started following them. I started reading. I started listening, and every argument that I had against it was addressed and overcome with sound logic and science from these individuals. And so, like I said, I tested it in 2017. My lab values were immaculate afterwards. My inflammation went down, blood sugar went down, not that it was high before, testosterone went up, cholesterol was fine, kidneys were fine. And I'll address some of these things as we go later on. But so now I think I've kind of helped paint that picture of how we got here and how meat and fat have been demonized. But the truth is, humans have been eating meat for as long as we've been on this planet. As a matter of fact, we've been eating meat longer than we've been eating plants. If you look back anthropologically, I forget the exact number, maybe 10, 12, maybe 14,000 years ago when we, air quotes, domesticated wheat. You can look back through, if you study history and human diet prior to that, you'll see that we feasted on animals. We followed animals around. Check out the book Sapiens. It's in there. There's a whole lot of other resources where you can dig into this for yourself. But the argument has been made that we did not domesticate wheat, that wheat actually domesticated us. If you think about what farming requires, people have to stay with the crop and tend to it. One way, I think the way that we've always looked at that was it allowed us to settle down and no longer follow the herds. But in reality, maybe it prevented us from following the herds because we had to stay and tend to the wheat. And there's also been some evidence that agriculture is what paleontologists and archaeologists, whatever, are actually considering poverty foods. Not because people didn't have money, but because they were food poor, they were animal poor. There was a great die-off of the megafauna, and people had to figure out how to, sustain their lives, and cultivating crops became the answer to that. So again, this idea that we've been farming and eating plants for as long as we've been alive isn't as true as the fact that we've been eating animals as long as we've been alive. Again, there's evidence that our brains really began to grow and develop when our ancestors figured out that they could crack open bones and eat marrow from dead animals, and that brain development is actually what separated our species from the other Homo species that have not survived evolution. And so, our brain is mostly fat. It runs on fat. As a matter of fact, there are, I think, 2/3 of our brain, if you give it sugar and ketones, it will run on the ketones. It prefers ketones. So the fact that that is a preferred fuel source is a very important and powerful realization. Again, given both, it chooses one. Well, the one that it chooses is then most likely primary, not secondary or backup, as has been thought. So that's sort of some of the background on humans and biology. Look, we don't have 4 stomachs. Human beings cannot break down plant material. We cannot break down cellulose. In fact, the animals who do break it down are in the ruminant class, and they have 4 stomachs. Like, part of being in the ruminant class is it has 4 stomachs. So that'd be deer, elk, cows, I believe horses, sheep, maybe. Pigs are not ruminants, but so they don't necessarily eat as much grass. But the ruminants actually, the way that I used to phrase this back in 2017 when I did that first experiment was, we're outsourcing our nutrient assimilation, right? And so when you think about, hey, you're told to eat plants because they're healthy and they have vitamins and minerals. Well, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. Yes, they do have vitamins and minerals. They also contain anti-nutrients. Plants don't have kinetic defenses. And what I mean by that is, like, a kinetic defense. Like, if you come up to me and try to take my wallet, I could try to punch you. I have arms, I have legs, I have feet, I can run away, right? Those are kinetic movement defenses. Plants are rooted in the ground. They can't move. They don't have kinetic defenses. What they do have are chemical defenses, and they don't want to be eaten. So they have developed these chemical defenses in order to prevent things from eating them. Even something like caffeine. Caffeine is actually a plant-based insecticide. It is a neurotoxin. When insects ingest caffeine from plants that contain it, it fries their nervous system, right? So think about that. Caffeine is an insecticide. It is a plant-based neurotoxin. You also have, classes of anti-nutrients, lectins, phytates, oxalates, tons of them, right? And so even if we make this argument that plants have nutrients, they also have anti-nutrients. If we get past the anti-nutrients and we say, hey, the ratio of nutrients to anti-nutrients, even if that skews towards a pro or a benefit, like, hey, I get more than I lose from the anti-nutrients and the downside of those things, which I'm not sure that is true. We'll come back to that. But even if it is, then you have to deal with, well, can I digest, absorb, and assimilate those nutrients? Well, we can't break down. Humans don't have the ability to break down plant material. Only the ruminants do. They've got the 4 stomachs, they ferment it. And when that fermentation occurs in their stomachs, what actually happens is they don't absorb those nutrients and the energy as carbohydrates. They actually have specialized bacteria in their gut that ferment that, and the production of gas, right, occurs through the fermentation. And what is actually absorbed are proteins and fats after that fermentation occurs. So they've got 4 stomachs. They have specialized digestive systems to handle this. And that's what allows them to absorb energy in the form of protein and fat. You're not that. You're a human. You have one stomach. As a matter of fact, as humans, we have traded a larger brain for a shorter digestive tract. A lot of people will point to horses or gorillas, say, hey, well, look how much muscle they have, and they're vegetarians, blah, blah, blah. Well, again, they don't. It's a very similar story. Anything that they are absorbing is being absorbed as protein and fat through that fermentation process. Gorillas have a significantly larger stomach than humans do, and have specialized digestive tracts to deal with that plant fiber. So again, just talking through why it makes sense to me to eat fewer vegetables. Look, they're loaded with plant-based chemicals. They're defense mechanisms. So oxalates, phytates, lectins, all those anti-nutrients that are going to cause immune responses. So if you suffer from autoimmune disorders, if you've ever had anything autoimmune, it's usually from a plant-based food. It's very rarely from red meat. We'll get back to the autoimmune as one of the benefits for going carnivore in just a minute. Just want to make sure we're covering all this stuff on plants. Look, every plant that you think of as healthy, even bananas, blueberries, whatever, the plants that are, air quotes, edible in the natural world actually contain known carcinogens. There's a list. I'll try to find that as well and put that in the show notes. And if I asked you to name all the healthy greens, you'd probably come up with kale, spinach, broccoli. Not cauliflower's not green, but okay, it's a cruciferous vegetable. Brussels sprouts, asparagus. Almost every single green that you can name is a man-made cultivar from the mustard seed plant. In other words, those plants do not occur naturally. They would not exist had man not at some point in the last 10,000, 12,000, 14,000 years messed with plant genomics to create them. So the next time you see natural next to spinach or kale, you kind of have to ask yourself, well, what qualifies or classifies as natural? I don't know. I'm doubting the naturalness of something that is only in existence because man cultivated it. Okay, top 10 reasons to go carnivore. I'm going to start these. I'll kind of organize these by benefit. So, the first benefit is optimal health and longevity. Carnivore may very well be the optimal human diet for longevity, for a lot of the reasons that we've talked about up until this point. But I'll give you 4 more specific benefits that you get from being on the carnivore diet. Number 1, you're going to reduce inflammation, right? And this is sort of a corollary to point number 2, that you can reduce autoimmune disorders. You're also going to reduce blood sugar. That's number 3. And number 4 is mitochondrial health, right? So if you have healthier mitochondria, if you have lower blood sugar, if you don't have autoimmune responses, all of those things are going to add up to reduced inflammation. So let's break a couple of these down. Obviously, lower blood sugar, you're not eating carbohydrates, you're not spiking your insulin, you don't have blood sugar releases. Steak and the foods that we would eat on a carnivore diet, especially done properly, a carnivore diet is a high fat diet. It is a ketogenic diet by nature. So we're eating fatty cuts of meat. Those things take a long time to digest. And so that energy absorption and it basically occurs at a slow trickle, sort of like a drip, rather than eating a bowl of rice and having this sudden surge of nutrients and sugar in your bloodstream, right? Every carbohydrate, whether it's good or bad, I say good or bad, like good carbs, bad carbs, air quotes, they're all broken down into sugar. That is the usable substrate for carbohydrates. Like you don't flood your bloodstream with complex carbohydrates. They're just complex because it takes longer to break them down into sugar, but eventually they are always ways broken down into sugar. Whether I'm carnivore or not, I believe for a longevity that we want to burn as little sugar as possible over our lifetime. And obviously carnivore helps us do that. Just looking at notes here. So reduce blood sugar, no more autoimmune issues. Maybe I shouldn't say no more, but reduced. And so this is a really interesting thought process. I got this from Dr. Anthony Chaffee. He is Plant-Free MD. If you want to check him out, he's a great resource if you're interested in more on carnivore diet. But if we think about what an autoimmune disorder is, we've thought that, as the name implies, auto, self, immune, that we're attacking our own cells, right? In reality, what's happening is, and here's how we test this, if you remove the offending molecules, then the immune response and the symptoms stop, right? So let's just say I'm eating oats and they have phytates, or if I'm eating spinach or kale and the oxalates are causing an autoimmune response, and then I stop eating kale, I remove the oxalates, now my body is no longer producing an immune response. So the response ceases and the symptoms of that autoimmune condition stop. Well, my body wasn't attacking myself. It was attacking the oxalates or whatever that foreign body was that we didn't want. Now, my cells, some of them, whether it was joint pain or skin irritation, whatever it was, those cells were basically collateral damage in the immune response, right? So if you remove the offending molecules and the response and the symptoms stop, then the body wasn't attacking itself. It was attacking an invader or what it thought was a threat or what actually was a threat. So this tells us the body isn't attacking itself. That's really important, and it could change our complete treatment paradigm on autoimmune disorders. So just keep that one in mind as well. That's another great benefit for going carnivore. So we got reduce inflammation, that's 1, reduces autoimmune disorders and issues, that's 2, reduces blood sugar, that's 3, and improves mitochondrial health, that's 4. Now, next benefit or next group of benefits, I'm going to say is ketogenic benefits, right? So all of these are sort of benefits that you would experience by being on a ketogenic diet. And again, carnivore done properly is a ketogenic diet. We want about 75 to 80% of our calories coming from fat. You're going to get smooth, even energy, right? That's number 5. Number 6 is mental clarity, cognitive function. Number 7 is unlimited energy, right? I'll break that one down too. But smooth and even energy, we talked a little bit about this. It's kind of part and parcel with reduced blood sugar and not having those spikes. You get that slow trickle of fat, fat being a much slower burning fuel source. And when you're a carnivore, just like with any keto diet or most, you don't feel hungry. You don't feel like you have to eat. So, that smooth and even energy is a huge benefit, as well as mental clarity. It's well documented that the ketogenic diet supports focus, clarity, cognitive function. As I told you earlier, the brain prefers ketones over sugar. If you put if both are present, it will burn preferentially the ketones. So that tells you a lot right there. It's not a secondary, it's not a reserve fuel source. It is preferred by the brain. Number 7, like I said, unlimited energy. So I do want to spend some time breaking this one down because as an athlete, this one is really important to me. We started talking about this a lot several years ago. I say my buddy Mike Lum and I, we still kind of have a freeze-dried backpacking food company called Fuel the Pursuit. And the reason that we started doing that, we started making the meals for ourselves because on a backcountry hunt, the quality of food that we wanted does not exist. There's not a freeze-dried backpacking meal that I would eat off the shelf right now. There's just not. So we started making our own, and then we started to produce it. And as we did that, we started to speak on and teach the benefits of a ketogenic diet for, we'll say, endurance athletes, backcountry athletes. And here's what happens. So we're going to compare a fat-adapted and fat-fueled athlete to a carb-based, non-fat adapted athlete. And this has to do with our glycogen stores. So when you consume carbohydrates, you store the stored form of carbohydrates is glycogen, and your ability, your capacity to store glycogen, your glycogen capacity is dependent upon your muscle mass. So more muscle mass, more glycogen capacity. Less muscle mass, less glycogen capacity. So let's just say, I'm 210 pounds. I may be able to store, let's call it 400 grams of glycogen in my skeletal muscle. And we can all store, give or take, about 100 grams in our liver. So let's say my glycogen storage capacity is 500 grams. Okay. Also of note, not necessarily for this conversation, but just so you know, when you pull 1 gram of carb into your muscles as glycogen, it pulls 2 to 3 grams of water with it, right? And so you will store water in your muscles with glycogen. That's why bodybuilders carb up and look more like balloons when they're on stage. It's why if you immediately, or when you go low carb, it's why you immediately drop 4 to 6 pounds of water weight. It's not extracellular water weight. It's intracellular water weight. It's the water weight that was inside of your muscles. Now, there's an argument that can be made that you want that for strength if you're a strength athlete, but that's a separate conversation. Right now, we're talking about energy. So 500 was the number. That's my estimated glycogen storage capacity. Right. So if I've got 500 grams of carbs that I can store, there are 4 calories per gram of carbohydrate. Okay. So if we do 500 grams times 4 calories per gram, that is 2,000 calories of energy that I can store on my body. So if you think about like 1980s advice, it was carb up the night before, right? Carb up is essentially topping off your glycogen levels. You're filling up your glycogen levels. So let's just say I nailed that perfectly. Right. Let's just forget for a minute how hard it is to nail that and just whatever. Let's just say I nail it perfectly. I ate my spaghetti. I've got 500 grams of glycogen loaded up, and I'm going to go run a marathon the next morning. Well, 2,000 calories is not enough calories to get a 210-pound dude like me through an entire marathon. I'm going to burn more calories than that running 26 miles. So what do you think happens when I run out of those 2,000 calories? If you said bonk, you are completely accurate. There's an entire industry built on that fact that I can't get through that race without running out of that fuel, right? So I would have to ingest gels or goos or drink sugar water or whatever the thing is in order to keep my body going. Now, we also have to keep in mind there's 2 energy sources, right? There's fat and carbohydrates. And so what we're talking about right now is a carb-fueled athlete. On the other side of the spectrum, if I was a fat-fueled athlete and fat-adapted, and as a matter of fact, there are guys recently, I think some dude ran 7 consecutive marathons, like 1 marathon a day for 7 days in a row, and he did it fasted just to prove this point that I'm making, that if you're ketogenic or specifically if you're fat adapted, that you don't need to eat to fuel your athletic endeavors. Now, could he have run faster times had he fueled? Sure. But the point that he was making was there is enough energy in your adipose tissue, your stored energy, your fat cells, to fuel anything that you could want to do. So let's break that down the same way we did glycogen. I told you I'm 210 pounds. Let's just say for easy math, I'm 10% body fat. So that would be 10% times 210 pounds. That's 21 pounds of fat that I have on my body, right? Fat, also called adipose tissue. That is stored energy for later use. So if I'm a truly fat adapted organism, I can tap into that for fuel at any time. Our example A runner who was carb based is not fat adapted. So when they run out of, or you run out of your 2,000 calories of stored glycogen, you should be able to immediately switch fuel sources and tap into your fat stores. The only people who can do that are people who have previously been fat adapted and have what we would consider phenomenal metabolic flexibility in order to make that fuel source switch instantaneously. Most people, it takes a lot of time. If you go keto for the first time, you're told to expect the keto flu. and it lasts 5 to 7 days. That flu is your transition between fuel sources. It's your body starting to upregulate ketone production and become fat adapted. So, you're not going to pause 2,000 calories into a marathon and say, hey, I gotta wait 7 days to adapt to a new fuel source, right? No, you're just going to slam a goo or a gel and keep going, right? So sorry, that's a tangent. Come back to the stored fat. 21 pounds of stored fat on my body, right? So also important here for this conversation, 1 gram of fat has 9 calories, right? Remember, 1 gram of carbs has 4 calories. So you've got 2.25 times the energy, gram for gram, in fats versus carbs. So this goes back to that conversation about packing food for backcountry hikes or things where you've got to live out of a backpack and you have to carry food on you. It makes so much sense to carry, if I've got to carry my food, right? 1 gram of carbs, 4 calories, 1 gram of fat, 9 calories. So gram for gram, same amount of weight, I can get 2.25 times the energy. Why the fuck would I carry carbs? I'm not carrying a sack of potatoes. I'm carrying a bunch of peanut butter or almond butter, right? It's also smaller in volume. Now, back to our calculation here. 21 pounds of stored body fat times, we've got to get that into grams. There's 454 grams per pound. So we've got 21 pounds times 454. So that's 9,500 grams of fat. Multiply that now times 9, because we've got 9 calories per gram. And so that is 85,806 calories of stored energy on my body right now that I'm lugging around with me everywhere I go. And that's at 10% body fat. So if you're 20% body fat at the same body weight, you have twice as many. That would be 170,000 calories, which is why the dude that I just told you about was able to run 7 days, a marathon a day for 7 straight days without ingesting food, because you have enough fat, enough stored energy on your body right now for whatever you want to do. If you're truly fat adapted, you can tap into it and you don't have to eat in order to do that. So this feeds into, that smooth, even energy. But as an athlete, this is an incredibly powerful thing. And then I'll just say the next benefit of going keto, final one here, number 8, is lifestyle. I think, for me personally at least, it's easy, it's fun, it's delicious. I get to eat steak and eggs and bacon. I love those foods. I have always done well on a higher protein diet. I enjoy those foods. I like eating them. It works for me. I'm not saying that carnivore works for everybody. I don't think everybody has to do it. I think nutrition is a very individual thing. And I would encourage you to do some experiments. If you have beliefs or disbeliefs, could you suspend them? Can you challenge what you think you know, what you think you believe, and try something that could be better? If you have autoimmune diseases or disorders or issues and you haven't been able to fix them, go strict carnivore for 3 months and see if they go away. Maybe they don't, but at least you tried. You tried something else, right? So I'll tell you quickly, man, this is running long. So we'll go over my concerns as I set this one up and then how I'm setting it up. And I'll skip the Q&A and we'll address your questions. If you have any questions, send them in to me. And I'll address those questions along with the common questions, things like, cholesterol, protein intake, the fiber myth, how do you get enough calories? Are you worried about your kidney health, your training concerns, things like that. So we'll get into those questions in a future episode. But if you have more, send them to me. So my main concerns in going back to carnivore recently, number 1 was maintaining my muscle mass that I've gained over the last few years following a traditional bodybuilding diet. Like I said, I'm 210 pounds. When I did carnivore previously, I was about 185. And I don't want to lose this muscle. The other one is maintaining my work capacity and my endurance. I love to go hunt and be able to put on, 15, 20 miles a day in the mountains with a heavy pack if I need to. So I don't want to lose that aerobic base either. So far, I can tell you a month in, I have not had any negative impact in those areas. And I'll tell you, I put those as my concerns before the typical health concerns because, as I told you in 2017, I've already meticulously tested all those. I'm not worried about my cholesterol or other lab values, kidney health, anything like that. I will get blood work done just to stay on top of it, but I do that regardless of how I eat. And I'm not concerned about those right now because I've previously tested them. I'm really, my main concerns are things that I have not previously addressed with success. I gave up carnivore in 2017 because I was not eating enough. The biggest mistake I made when I did carnivore previously was that I ate too little fat. I was aiming for like a 1.4 to 1 ratio of protein to fat. And that simply wasn't giving me enough energy, one, to get into ketosis, but two, to support my physical activity. So that's why I went away from carnivore. I just didn't believe that I could get enough energy to sustain and support what I do from a physical activity standpoint. That was user error. It was a wrong setup on my part. So it's not an indictment of the carnivore diet. I was just doing it wrong. What I'm doing this time is a 1-to-1, at least a 1-to-1 ratio of fat to protein. 1-to-1 puts me at about 75% of my calories from fat. 2-to-1, I forget the exact math, but it takes me a little bit closer to like 80%. Most days, I'm slightly higher than 1-to-1 ratio in terms of fat to protein. And so, what does that look like? We'll get into some of that in a minute. But like, for example, one whole egg is 7 grams of protein and 5 grams of fat. So I would need to add butter or tallow or some other carnivore fat source to that meal. Like, let's say I have 6 eggs. 6 times 7 is 42, and 6 times 5 is 30. So 30 grams of fat, 42 grams of protein in a half dozen eggs. So then I would add let's say a tablespoon of ghee. That's 12 to 15 grams of fat. So now I'm at that 1-to-1 ratio, about 45 grams of fat and about 42 grams of protein, right? So that might be a meal mid-morning for me. And I'm kind of getting ahead here. But so that's my setup is a 1-to-1 ratio. That's giving me more energy, and that's allowing me to train hard. On the training side, I couldn't be more happy. I'm just going to address this now because I've told you those were my main concerns. You don't need glycogen to train hard. And that was something that was a hard one for me to accept. I've heard for so long that you need carbs. You have to have glycogen. You need to have carbs post-lift for an insulin spike. None of that is true. There are actually studies. Dr. Jeff Volek is one of the great researchers on ketogenic diets for athletes. And he's got a faster study. I'll link that in the description as well, but that's definitely worth reading into. What they found was fat-adapted athletes actually replenish glycogen faster post-exercise than carb-based athletes. So the caveat there, again, is fat adapted. Now that can take up to 6 months if you've never been keto or truly fat adapted. I can tell you my strength is up, my workout stamina is up. And what I mean by that is, on leg day, I'm an hour into leg day and I could keep going. I could train for 2 hours. I stop because I stick to my program sessions. I'm not going to overdo the volume. I'm recovering faster. I feel like I don't need the off days anymore. I still do take off days, and my pumps haven't suffered at all. I know I'm fat adapted due to my previous stints, not only with carnivore, but with intermittent fasting and keto diets. I know my overall metabolic health and flexibility is very helpful to being able to make this adaptation quickly. So if you're new to this, you may not adapt and enjoy these benefits within a month like I have, but you will get there if you're disciplined and consistent. And I'll say this too, I know a lot of people use fruits or honey around their workouts and call it carnivore. Number one, to me, it's not carnivore. If you're eating honey or fruits, that's not carnivore. I think I'm very non-binary, I'm very binary on this one. Usually I'm non-binary, but on this one, either you're carnivore or you're not. If you're eating plant foods, I don't care what the dose is, you're still exposing yourself to those plants. So it's not carnivore in my opinion. And I don't think that the insulin is actually the fruit and the insulin spike is actually helping. I think it's actually counterproductive because the more you do that, the more you prevent and delay your body from becoming truly fat adapted. And remember the study from Volger, the faster study. Fat adapted athletes will replenish glycogen faster than carb-based athletes. So if you don't do the 1 foot in, 1 foot out, you just go all in, you get fat adapted, you'll get to a point where you replenish glycogen stores faster than you would even if you were doing carnivore plus honey and fruit, right? So, I'll stop there and continue to talk about my setup and then we'll end this one because, I was not expecting this to be a full hour podcast. So if you're still here, thanks for continuing to listen. Okay, so 1-to-1 ratio of fat to protein. I'm eating about 4 meals a day. Prior to this, I was eating a typical bodybuilding diet. I was eating 6 times a day. On my non-lift days, however, I was eating keto. So again, it hasn't been a big adaptation or a long adaptation for me. But 4 meals a day, typically I'll have my first meal around 7 in the morning. I eat an 8 or 9 ounce ribeye with 2 pieces of bacon. Around 10, I'll have another meal that is about the size of what I just told you a second ago, 6 eggs with some ghee. Sometimes that could be, if I'm on the go, I love the Applegate pork sausages, no sugar added. Something that's going to give me about 40 to 50 grams of protein and about 50 to sometimes as much as 70 grams of fat in that meal. I'll eat again around 1 o'clock. That one is usually a pound of 80-20 ground beef. And then somewhere between 5:30 and 7, I'll have my final meal of the day. And it might be another pound to pound and a half of meat. I say pound, it could be just a pound of, again, 80-20 ground beef, ground pork. I'll talk you through some of the other things that we do. It could be, if we eat out, it could be a 16, 18, 20 ounce ribeye, whatever they have. So that's how I'm kind of setting up my 4 meals a day. I mentioned Dr. Anthony Chaffee earlier. One of the things that he recommends with carnivore is to eat twice a day and eat fatty meat until it no longer tastes good. So this is the other thing that I find really interesting about carnivore is that it's easy to undereat on the carnivore diet. I have not yet found an upper limit in terms of if I were to eat until I was crazy full, I don't have a negative effect from that the next day. I'm struggling to maintain my weight. I'm consciously eating as much as I can to, keep my weight where it is. It's fun to be able to do that. If you're somebody who's interested in weight loss, carnivore diet could be a huge way to benefit to do that. In terms of food sources, 75 to 80% lean ground beef is where you want to be. 85-15 is not quite lean enough. If that's all you can get, if that's all you have access to, make sure you're adding a fat source to that. I use ghee because it's basically butter with the protein cooked out. So my body, I just handle ghee better than I do butter. Some people on carnivore don't handle dairy at all. Some people do all the dairy. Some people do, cottage cheese and different things like that. So how you decide to incorporate dairy could be a whole other question, and maybe we'll address that in the Q&A in a different podcast. But I do ground pork and Boston butts. We have a local farmer who does pork and all of his animals the right way. So we support them, and we get big cuts, sometimes briskets, beef briskets as well. And we'll put those in the crock pot, and Donna and I will split those at night, like a 3 or 4 pound brisket or Boston butt. And then, we'll just go to town and we'll split it and there'll be nothing left. So let's see, what other food sources? Lamb is another good one. I eat a lot of bacon. We save the bacon grease. So that's another carnivore fat source. A lot of my beef, I'll cook in bacon grease. I still have a freezer full of elk and deer. I want to eat those because, I took those animals' lives with the intention of eating that animal and having that meat. So I'm definitely not going to waste it. It also has the liver and heart ground into it, so I want those organs. That's another big part of the vitamin and mineral conversation. Liver from a healthy animal contains more vitamins and minerals than any plant that you could name. So for me, my insurance policy against any deficiencies is making sure that I'm eating organ meats. Eggs, I actually have not eaten eggs for like 8 years. I had done a test, the Pinner test years ago, that said I had a food intolerance to eggs. I have reintroduced them slowly with this carnivore diet phase over the last month. I haven't had any issues yet, knock on wood. So as long as that continues to be the case, I will be eating eggs. We're getting them from some of our local farmers around here. So, I really trust the quality of those. Chuck roasts, briskets, starting to experiment with larger chuck roast rolls so that we can slice off our own steaks, save money compared to buying ribeyes. But ribeye is kind of like the gold standard of where you want to be eating or what you want to be eating on a carnivore diet. So tons of ribeyes. Like I said, the pork sausage from Applegate when I travel is a good one. Carnivore keto bricks are great for travel. So that's a version of their keto brick. Instead of being made with cacao butter, it's made with tallow, grass-fed tallow. So, and then there's a total carnivore protein powder that I use occasionally that also has organ blend in it. I'm going to start to test dehydrating ribeyes and other fattier cuts of meat for portable snacks, eating them on airplanes, taking them on hunts in the fall. So I'm going to do a lot more experimentation with those. And finally, this is a little bit of sad news. My coffee consumption has been cut in half. Part of that is, it's, as I said earlier, like if in my mind, if you're consuming a plant, it's not carnivore. So I made a conscious effort to, at minimum, cut my caffeine, coffee consumption in half. I love coffee. I love the taste of it. I love the smell. I love the ritual. I love just doing that in the mornings. I'm not sure I'm going to get rid of the first cup every day, but I have gotten rid of the second one. First, I'll say 1 to 3 days of that were pretty rough. The fact that it was rough actually fueled me more and made me want to kick it because I hated having to admit to myself that a chemical had that much power over me. So I'm like, I'm going to make damn sure that I get through that and don't have to have it. And like I said, after 3 or 4 days, it's fine. Don't need it. So that is my dissertation TED Talk on carnivore diet. There's still a lot more that I could talk about with this. So if you're still here, thanks for listening. Please send me your questions. If you dig this, if you got somebody that you want to share carnivore diet info with, share this with them. And, as always, thanks for being here on the Move the Chains podcast. We've got some great guests coming up for you in the next couple of weeks, so stay tuned for those as well. Till then, keep moving the chains.